Hello, what's up everybody? How is it going? Welcome to another video of tutorial series PHP Specials. I'm your host Anwar Ali and I'm here today with the new topic, and the topic is learning PHP or writing PHP codes in object-oriented approach. I will not be making this a long video, but maybe we have to divide this into two parts, or maybe I can cover this in a single part. I'll just explain you the core concept of object-oriented programming, how it works, what are classes and what are the objects, how to use them, and what are the benefits of writing codes in object-oriented approach, and how is it different than procedural approach. I plan to make this video because in all of my tutorials of PHP Specials I've been following procedural approach, and we will be doing the same thing that we covered in old classes, but we will try to make our code written in object-oriented approach, and you will understand it automatically. Why is it important to use object-oriented approach instead of procedural approach? Now, in order to understand object-oriented approach, we need to have a concept of class. Okay, so what is a class? We must have learned in our schools or even in some books that a class is an encapsulated form of variables and functions. But what it actually mean is, let's see. Let me give let's say an easy way of explanation, which might not be so true, but it will help you understand what is an importance of class. So for example, we have a variable. Let's say a variable is, let me just create a application amps www PHP Specials. Let me grab this new file, Control S. Let me call this oop.php, so object-oriented programming.php. Let us suppose we have a variable, and the variable is $a, and it has a value 1 maybe. Okay, so a has 1, yeah, right? So now if we assign that a equals to 2, the 1 gets replaced by 2. So a variable cannot hold more than one value inside it, right? So once we assign another value to the same variable, the old value gets replaced. Now, in order to overcome this, the programming languages, what they did is that they introduced a new type of variable which is known as array. So let's say arr equals to 1, and not 1, array 1. Now if you want to assign multiple values to the same array, we can just comma separate this, or even write it this way. So array equals to 1 and $arr equals to 2. So we found a way out to assign multiple values to the same variable with the help of array. So we were not just satisfied with a variable, because it is really a tedious task to have various variable to hold multiple values. So instead of saying a equals to 1 and b equals to 2 and c equals to 3 and so on, we could just assign 1, 2, 3 in a same variable in format of array. So developers, or let's say programming languages, came into a new approach of defining array. Similarly, they also introduced functions to do multiple sets of tasks. Function, let's say ABC, and here they could do task 1, right, and echo task 2. So whenever they wanted this set of tasks to be executed, they just called ABC. Now calling ABC would call this function and perform these set of operations at once. So these were some tips and tricks that a programming language introduced. So multiple value assignment was achieved by introducing array, and multiple set of tasks were performed by just one line of code by introducing functions. Now they were still not satisfied. Let us just assume, I'm just giving a scenario about the use of class. So the programmers, or let's say programming languages, were still not satisfied with this facility. So they introduced a new type of instance, and they called it object. Okay, now in order to call and make an object, they introduce a encapsulated form of variables and functions in the same place. So they came with the concept of class, which consisted of multiple variables, let's say multiple arrays, and at the same time they consisted multiple set of functions, not only one function but multiple set of functions. Now whenever they wanted to do this, they just call the function with the help of that object. So object basically is the type of class or the instance of class which can use all the variables and all the arrays and all the functions of the class. So class is an encapsulated form of multiple variables and multiple functions which can be accessed by its own object. So this way, what they were able to do is they were able to create a single variable or single instance that could have access to multiple variables and multiple functions at the same time, so that we can create multiple instances of that class at the same time and use it in different places wherever we want. So now we don't need to assign single variable a single value, and we don't need to assign, let's say, a set of variables in a set of value, and we don't need to just create a set of tasks for a function, but we can have multiple functions and multiple arrays and multiple variables at the same place, which can be accessed by just a single instance, which is known as object. So this was the need of programmers, which kept on increasing, and in order to make things more compact and more encapsulated, they came with the concept of class. And you will see in further exploring the programming language, you will see that even they are not satisfied with a simple object-oriented approach. So they started building multiple frameworks in object-oriented approach, like we have MVC framework, where we have code igniter, which they divided the controllers, models, and views, and three different types of classes and files, which could be called easily. So each and every classes have a set of functions that can be used. So different approaches of object-oriented programming has been introduced in the market of web development, which has made things more easier. So this will keep on growing. So the basic of all the MVC frameworks, or the frameworks available in the market, if we understand the concept of object-oriented programming properly, we will be able to understand any frameworks in future. So let me quickly explain how to create a class, and how to create the instances of class, how to use the functions inside class, and how to use the variables inside class. So we don't need oop.php right now. Let me just delete the file. What I want to do is I want to create a simple class. Okay, there are few rules while creating class. So let us suppose I'm creating a class with the name A. Okay, so if we have the class name A, it is necessary for us to, it is not compulsory, but it is a good practice to have the name of the class same as the class name. I mean, name of the file of that class should be same to the name of the class. So for example, if we are going to create a class named A, my file name should also be a.php. As I told, it is not compulsory, but it is a good practice to have the same name. So I'm creating a file known as a.php, and just have a practice to create the file name in lowercase, like lowercase a.php. So this is my file name. Now if I want to create a class called A, what I need to do is I just start my PHP tag, give class and capital or uppercase A. So class name, it is a practice of writing class name is writing it in uppercase, and the file name should be in lowercase. So this is the standard practice of defining class. So I just created a class called A. Now what can a class have? A class can have multiple variables and multiple functions. as we wish. And there are different types of class, let's say, variables. We call it scope of the variable and functions. There are three types. The first one is known as public, and second one is known as protected, and third one is known as private. But we don't need to go into that depth right now. What I will do is I'll just create some public variable and public functions, and I'll explain about these scopes later on. So let me just create few variables, public, and call it, let's say, dollar $x. Okay, public $x. Let me just give a value of blank right here, or let me just give some value, test value. Let me create another variable and call it y, and give me another value. Let us give it this another value over here. Okay, so we have two variables in the same class. Now let us also define some function inside class. So function, and my function name would be fn1, so first function, and what this will do is echo this is first function. Okay, similarly, let me create another function, and this will do echo this is second function. So I've created some variables and I've created some functions. Okay, so this is my class. A file a.php is a class called a with two variables x and y and two functions fn1 and fn2. Okay, so this is a compact form of variables, combination of variables and functions we have. Right now you can see that this is just a simple text printing of the strings, but this can be some complex task in future, like connecting to the database, selecting from the database, or maybe inserting into the tables, and making some complex logics. So everything can be different here, but I'm just trying to explain you the structure of object-oriented programming. So we have a class with a set of variables and set of functions. Okay, now let us create another file and call it b.php. And this is not a class, but this is just a simple PHP file. Okay, so what I want to do here is I want to use the variables and functions of this class in b.php. So first of all, what I need to do is I need to include this class to my b.php. So I will do include b.php. By doing this, now my class has been included in this function, in this file. So what I need to do is the functions and variables of the class can be accessed by a variable which is of this class type. So if my class name is a, we should have a type of variable, a variable which has the type as a, so which is known as the object of that class. So any variable of type a is known as the object of that class. So in order to create an object, what we usually do is we just give a name of an object, a random name, whatever it can be. So I'm just calling it obj. Okay, so obj equals to new a. Okay, so this is how we create an object of class type a. So this means obj is a child, or let's say a class, an instance of a. So we are creating a new instance of a and assigning it to b, obj. We can create instances this way, or we can also have parentheses over here, the round brackets over here, and the meaning of this is actually, I will explain it later. We call it constructor, calling the constructors, and I will explain about it later on. Okay, so we are creating a new instance of a and assigning it to obj. Now obj has a right to access each and every functions and variables of this class. So it can access x, it can access y, it can access fn1, it can access fn2, because obj is the type of class a. So what we can do here now is, if you want to access x, which has test value inside it, we can just say echo $obj arrow with a minus sign and greater than. So this is an arrow. So, and if we want to access x, we can just say x without dollar in front of it. So it is saying grab the value of obj's x. So it starts searching the variable x inside a.php, and if it finds it here, so it grabs the value of test x, which is test value, and just prints it. So let's see if we got it right. So localhost / php underscore spatial / b.php. So I'm running b.php, where I have included this should be a.php, because the class is inside a.php, where I have included a.php, created a new instance of a and named it obj, and I'm accessing the variable x through obj this way, and I'm just printing it. So by this code it should print test value, right? Let's see. So we can see test value has been printed. Similarly, if I want to access another value which is inside y, what I can do is I can just call y. You can see another value has been printed. Now if I want to print out this value, I just need to call function. I don't need to echo it here because it has already been echoed here. So I can remove echo from here and just call the function. Now in order to call the function, we just need to give the name of the function with bracket. So in order to call the variable, we don't need round bracket like this, but in order to call the function fn1, I need to give the bracket to indicate that I'm calling a function of class A. So if function 1 is being called, it should print this is first function. Let's see. So this is first function. Similarly, if I want to call the second function fn2, all I need to do is I just need to call it this way. See? So what I'm trying to imply is we just have one single variable and it is able to access variables at the same time. If we have even defined arrays over here, it could also have access those arrays. At the same time, it could also access the function. A single variable can do multiple tasks. So by encapsulating various variables and functions in the same class, a single instance obj is able to access each and all of those values. So now previously a variable could only have one value in it. Then came the array, where a variable can have multiple value. Then came the object, where a variable can have different values, different variables, and different functions at the same time with a single name. So this is how, and this is why object-oriented programming is really good. Now, at the same time, you can create multiple instances of A. So one of the instances obj, we can create another instance like say obj2 by just calling new A. Now obj2 can also access all of the variables and all of the functions of the same class. For example, obj2 and function1. If I do this, this will print out this is the first function. So by this, the first thing that will print out is this is the second function, and the second thing that will print out is this is the first function. So there should be two strings now. This is the second function, this is the first function. So through obj we printed this is the second function, and through obj2 we printed this is the first function. So a class, it has an encapsulated form of variables and functions, and a class can have as many instances as we wish, and each of the instance can access each and every variables and each and every functions of the class. Okay, so let us see some real use of object-oriented programming. Okay, let us try to complete some of the basic tasks and see. So what today we will be doing is we will be creating a simple application, that is calculator.php, calculator, making a calculator in an object-oriented approach. And by understanding the concept of class through this simple app, you will be able to do more complex tasks like crude operations in PHP: add, edit, delete, inserting in the database through a class. So let us start by a simple application calculating two of the numbers. So let me just close this. You can I will just let it be here so that you can understand the core concept of class. Now I will create a form and call it like calculator.php. Not PHP, yes, I don't need PHP open tag here. I just need to create a form. So let me just create an HTML document, name it calculator, and create a form here that asks for two number. So my form method equals to post, and name method equals to post, and type equals to action, and action equals to let's say my action is calculate.php. okay, so after the calculator form has been submitted, it will take us to calculate.php. So my action is calculate.php and my current form is inside calculator.php. I'll ask for two numbers. So my number would be input, type equals to text, name equals to num1, and let me give a placeholder that says first number. Okay, and my second input would be br, input, type equals to text, name equals to num2, and my placeholder would be second number. Let me give another br, let's say 2 brs, and input type equals to submit, and name equals to, let's say, submit, and value equals to calculate. Let us also give one more input, and that is for choosing whether we want to add, subtract, divide, or multiply. So we can have that in a select field or drop down, or even a radio button if you wish, but I'm just using select for now. Select, name equals to operation maybe. So what operation would you like to do? With the option of value equals to, first value would be add if you want to add, and the second value would be minus, third value would be multiply, and the fourth value would be divide. So add, minus, divide, and let's say multiply. So whatever we want to do. Let's see if we got our form correct. Calculator.php. So we have a form here: first number, second number, add, minus, divide, multiply, and finally calculate. This should be submit. Input type equals to submit, submit. So we have a button now that says calculate. Okay, so this form is submitting the values to calculate.php. So I need to create another file that says calculate.php. okay, now in this file I will grab the values from here, num1, num2, and operations, and calculate and submit. So what I will do is I will grab all these things, PHP and $num1 equals to $_post num1, and $num2 equals to $_post num2, and operation equals to $_post operation. Correct? Now what I want to do now is I want a core class for calculator, and that could be, let's say, new file, and I would like to name it as inc, just to include the class. I'm just giving a generic name, inc.php. So inc.php will have our core class. So my class I want to create, so class, and I want to name it as inc. As I told, it is good practice to have the class name in lowercase, So I just like to rename it into lowercase I. Okay, so I want to have three variables here, which would be public $num1, which is 0 by default, and public $num2, which is 1 by default, and public $num3, which is 0 and 0 by default. This is the operation. Okay, so I have three variables and I'm just assigning false or 0 in each and every variable. Now what I want to do is I want to create the functions to add these numbers. So first function would be add. Okay, so public add, and what it does, it adds these to number. So in order to access this number from inside the class, instead of using object, if I want to access these numbers from within the class, what I can do is, instead of saying $obj num1, what I can do is I can just say $this num1. So this means the variable, or this means the instance of the very class that I am inside right now. So this means inc, the object of inc. So this is, if I want to use the instance of the class within the class or from inside the class, I can use this instead of using its real object. So what I'm saying is the num1 variable of this class. Okay, so if I'm adding them, so I need to add num1 and $this num2, correct? So if I am calling the operation add, I need to add these two numbers and return it, correct? Similarly, public add, similarly we should have minus. The spelling of public is wrong, so public minus would subtract those two numbers, right? So I'll do the same, but I will subtract it. Similarly, public divide would divide those two numbers. So instead of minus, I will write divide. And similarly, finally, if I want to multiply, public multiply would multiply those two numbers. Okay, so this is the class. There is something more that we need to do to make it workable, but for now I just want to stop here in class. I'll just continue a little while after. So in calculate.php, now what I want to do is I want to include this class inside this file. So include inc.php. So now I got the class inside my file. I want to create a function that actually assigns these two number and operations to these values. So what I can do is, inside every class we can create a constructor that automatically gets called before, just at the time when the constructor and when the object of that class is created. So constructor actually is a function that is always there in a class, but we can define it so that we can use it in our own way. So for example, I have a constructor, let's say, and the constructor, another property of constructor is that it should have the same name as that of class. Even the casing should be same. So for example, if I want to create a constructor, what I can do is public inc, and this is the constructor of this class, which gets automatically called during the instance of this class is being created. So for example, if I create an instance of include this way, $obj equals to new inc, the first thing that happens is the constructor gets called. That's why I told you earlier the use of parenthesis inside the class is actually calling the constructor of the class. If you see, this is a function new inc, so inc is actually being called. Actually, we are missing something here. This would be function inside each and every names, because these are the function, right? So we have a function called inc, which is exactly same as the name of the class, and such type of function is known as constructor, which is automatically called whenever the new object of this class is created. So whenever I'm including this class and creating the object of this class, the first thing that happens is calling the constructor gets called. So what we can do here is the task that we want to do before any other operation, we can do it over here. So the best thing that we can do here in this case would be assigning real-time values to this num1, num2 and operation. So because since we are getting the num1, num2 and operation from this form, and we have grabbed those in these variables, what we can do is we can send these variables to the constructor of the class and use the constructor to assign these variables by those values. So what we can do is we can call this constructor below these variables and pass on these values to the constructor this way. So num1, $num2 and $num and operation, right? So we the values that we grab from the form, now we are passing it to the constructor. So we have passed num1, num2 and operation, so we need to receive them now. So $num1, $num2 and $operation. Okay, so since we have already received them, now what we can do is we can use this value to assign it over here. Now in order to assign it here, what we can do is $this num1, which means this should have value equal to num1, right? So this is, we are assigning the value num1 to this num1, right? Similarly, we need to assign this num2 to this num2. We don't want these to be 0. We want to replace it by the value that is being sent from here, and which is being sent from here actually. So the form sends the value to calculate, and now the calculate is sending this value to class, so which is over here. So now we need to replace the value 0 by the value that is being passed through the constructor. So this is what we are doing. So we are replacing num1, num2 and operation. So this would be num2 and this would be num2 and operation, and this would be operation. So now we have successfully replaced the 0 by the value that is being sent from calculate.php. Now whenever this adds, the value actually is being sent from the form is being added over here, here, here and here. Now after now we are ready to use the class. Now inside the calculate.php, since our operation we have already pulled it, we have created the object of the class, we have sent this value to the class, we have already assigned these values to the through constructor to these variables, and we have the functions ready to operate. Now all we need to do is we need to check the operation. If the operation is add, we need to call add function. Now what I want to do is if $operation is equal to add, what I can do is I can call the function add this way, and the function add is being called, which grabs the value of num1 and num2 and adds them and returns it. Now since it is returning some value, we need to have variable in front of it to hold. So my let's say output is add, right? So it is returning some value. Now what I can do is just echo $output. Similarly, if the operation is minus, you can just call the function minus and print out the output. Similarly, if the operation is multiply, I can just call the function multiply and echo the output. Finally, if the function is divide, I can just call the function divide and echo the output. But we again have missed something, that is the add is the function of inc, the class, so it should be called through the object of the class this way, $obj arrow add, $obj arrow minus, $obj arrow multiply and $obj arrow divide. And why is it so? Because these functions are the functions of the class, so it can only be called through its object. It can only be accessed through its object. So we have created the object and now we can use them. Now let's see if everything is working. Calculator.php. So my first number is 1 and my second number is 2. I want to add it, so calculate. So it is giving me 3. Perfect. Let's go back. My first number is 2 and my second number 2, and I want to minus, so it should be 0. Let's see, and it is adding, I guess. Why? Let me check. Calculator. Oh, all of the values are add, so I need to change it to minus. I need to change it to divide, and I need to change it to multiply. Save it, get back, refresh. I want to minus these two values. 2 minus 2 should be 0, so we have 0. Now I want to divide these two, so 2 divided by 2 is equal to 1, so there is 1. And I want to multiply these two, so 2 multiply 2 times 2 is 4, so we have 4. So our calculator is working fine. So this is how we did it. Let me just quickly revise them all. First of all, we created a form called calculator.php with two inputs, num1 and num2, which is first number and second number. After placing those two numbers, we ask the user to select the operation, so they either choose add, minus, divide and multiply, which is sent to calculate.php through post, and the first number is sent as num1, second number is sent as num2, and third number is sent as operation. So what we did in calculate.php is grab num1, num2 and operation through post, this way num1, num2 and operation through post, and placed it in num1, num2 and operation variable. Finally what we did is we created a class called inc, and in order to hold those three numbers, we created some public variables over here and called num1, num2 and operation, and by default the values of these three variables are set to be 0 initially. Now second thing that we did is we created a constructor which is automatically created while creating the object. So while creating the object, we just didn't call the constructor, but we also passed num1, num2 and operation to it, which is the value that is being sent from the form. So num1, num2 and operation is being sent to the constructor this way. So the best thing that we could do here is we assign these num1, num2 and operation to these public variables, and in order to do that, we just call this num1, this num2 and this operation, and assign it with num1, num2 and operation respectively. After that, we have various functions, add, minus, divide and multiply, and those functions just use the newly assigned values, num1, num2 and operation, and if it is add, it added it, if it is minus, it subtracted it, if it is divided, divided, and if it is multiply, it multiplied them and just returned them. So what we did in calculate.php is we created the object and called the constructor to assign these values to the variable of that class. Now in order to call the exact function, so if the operation is add, we need to call add function. So we just checked it over here. If the operation is add, call add. If the operation is minus, call minus. If the operation is multiply, call multiply, and if the operation is divide, call the divide. All right. So in order to minimize this in order to minimize the task, like we have 4 if statements, what we could also have done was we could just we could have just done this. So echo dollar operation, we could just call the function this way. Let's see if that works. I'll just comment out all. But yes, it worked actually, but what we need to do is, since the operation is a function of object, so we need to call it this way. So $obj arrow operation. So we can see 4 now. So what I've actually done is I've just skipped all these 4 if statement just by one line, since our function name is exactly same as add, minus, divide and multiply, that is the value of operation, right? So what I did is I just grab the operation from $post operation, and we have the function name same as the name of those values, add, minus, divide and multiply. So we have the function name already inside the variable operation. All I need to do is add round brackets after the name. So if the operation is add, add function is being called. If the operation is minus, minus function is being called. If the operation is divide, divide function is being called. And if the operation is multiply, the multiply function is being called. But since this function is the function of class, we need to call it through the reference of this instance. So obj arrow operation means call the, if we chose add, it calls obj add, and everything is done. So we don't need all these if statements over here. Let us just try this one more time. Get back, refresh. I want to add them. Now we can see 2 plus 2 is 4. I want to subtract them. So you can see 2 minus 2 is 0. I want to divide, and it should be 1, and that is 1. I want to multiply, and it is 2 times 2 is 4. So everything is working fine. So this is how we create a class, include the class in the file, create the instance or the object of the class, and finally use the function of that class, and this way. So by doing this, actually you have not practically seen what importance or what are the benefits of using and the object-oriented approach, because we have just one line of code right now in each and every function. Just return, 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 return. There is nothing more. But whenever we have like some functions that is being repeated so often, like we need to insert values to database in a project so many times, and we can have a single function for that will work out for each and every modules. So in such cases, this will be really useful. So that was it for today, and tomorrow I'll come with the real-time, some real-time topics like inserting into database using object-oriented programming. So that will make the use of class more clear to you. Until then, you have a look to the class, go to the different topics using class, make some research, and I'll see you tomorrow again with the same topic but in the real-time works. And if you have any confusion regarding today's topic, you can mention it in the comment. And if you like the video, please hit the thumbs up, and if you have not subscribed it yet, please subscribe, and don't forget to click on the bell icon so that you receive the notifications of each and every video that I upload. Have a nice time till then. I will see you tomorrow with the new topic. Goodbye.